Hi everyone, this time a lot has changed. Let's begin. First of all, I improved the visual look of the cauldron. It's not perfect yet, but it's definitely better. I added some lighting and more color, and I also changed the background. I purchased a new aspects for it. I added a secondary panel where you can view the full recipe list of aspects, choose a transfiguration to do, manage the transfiguration process, undo steps, resolve all changes, and switch the player's active aspect. I will explain that in a moment along with the oil button. There are also a simple button to exit the cauldron. Now, the cauldron is filled directly by the player using skills aimed at the cauldron sprite. The player literally has to cast skills towards the cauldron, and from those skills, the first aspect is extracted, meaning the primary aspect currently set on the player, even if the player has 3 aspects equipped. To change the aspect used for filling, the player needs to consume Alchemist. It allows switching the current aspect to one of the base elements: fire, water, air, or earth. At the beginning, only Alchemist is available. Later, as the player progresses, they will be able to manipulate internal aspects through potions. To create more complex aspects, simpler ones must be combined. For example, light, which currently consists of fire and air, requires you to throw fire into the cauldron, then press Alchemist twice. The first click changes fire to water, the second changes it to air. Then you throw air into the cauldron. When these 2 aspects combine, you obtain light. Once all aspects are filled, and remember, this requires rotation pipes and directing them towards 2 aspects to fill them. You must then build a path from each aspect to its corresponding source. When you are ready to complete the transfiguration, you press the finalize button. This starts heating the cauldron, and all aspects begin flowing upward due to pressure. If even one aspect fails to reach its source, the cauldrons overheat and explodes. This simply cancels the mechanic. The player can immediately re-enter transfiguration mode and try again, adjusting the pipes properly and pressing finalize once more. Next, for simpler transfigurations, I implemented a new cauldron mechanic. It works differently and more straightforwardly, but here boiling begins immediately when transfiguration starts. Initially, a small amount of water is added to the cauldron, and water can boil and spill out, as can all other aspects placed inside. So there is a time constraint. However, since this version of the cauldron is designed for simpler transfiguration, you usually won't need more than a few low-level aspects. To make collecting aspects easier, for example light, which again consists of air and fire, there is an additional oil mechanic. Since water is present from the start and fire or air would normally mix with it, oil acts as a separator. When you press the oil button, oil is poured into the cauldron as an aspect, but it does not mix with other aspect spheres. Instead, it pushes them downward, creating a physical barrier that separates earlier aspects from those added later. This serves 2 purposes. First, it reduces the temperature of the cauldron, and the temperature decreases every time the player adds something, especially oil, which lowers it the most. Oil can be added without limit, just like other aspects. However, if aspects begin to spill out of the cauldron, they evaporate and disappear, meaning new spheres must be added. To complete a transfiguration in this mode, you must gather exactly one of each required aspect. You can check which aspects are needed in the book or in the tooltip in the bottom right corner of the screen. Aspects already present in the cauldron become more transparent and less visible, so the player can quickly understand what is still missing. After pressing finalize, the required base item for the transfiguration is added. All aspects are absorbed into it, completing the transfiguration, and the resulting item is placed directly into the inventory. And that leads to the next topic: items and inventory. Each transfiguration now requires one or more specific item. This can be obtained in different ways, through quests, exploration, drops, and so on. So, transfiguration requires a single item or multiple. In the example show, a bottle and piece of charcoal are required. If they are present in the player's inventory, they are automatically used. Once the player completes everything correctly, the item slightly enlarge and transform into the resulting object, which is automatically added to the inventory. I also implemented a basic inventory system. There may or may not be traditional loot in the game, but everything is automated. The player won't need to manually collect or click items. At most, there will be a small animation of an item flying towards the player. The inventory is not used for crafting and cannot be opened or viewed, at least in the current plans. It simply exists to track items and player actions. I also added several purely visual features, smoother transitions to label, a preview on the Alchemy table showing the most recently researched or created aspect tab, and slight adjustment to the receipt table layout, especially element sizes. Localization has been tested for left to right languages. It works correctly. The only issue is font. For language outside the Latin alphabet, the default system font is used. I will need to research for more thematically appropriate fonts for those languages. I create a new core entity, an event system, which allows me to control the overall game flow, granting rewards, activating or deactivating save and load modules, and more. This will be essential for many future systems, so it now a foundational model. There was an earlier version used for quests and dialogues, but it was poorly implemented, so I rewrote it entirely. And finally, the most satisfying part, the full gameplay loop. It's research, transfigurate, use the resulting item. I'm showing it now. I create a small potion and I can now use it in game. Thanks you all for watching, good luck to everyone, click the links and button below the video, I will really appreciate it. See you in the next vlog, bye!